The church doors were already open. Inside, people were standing, fanning themselves with small paper programs. A choir woman cleared her throat like she wanted to sing, but her mouth was too dry. Someone whispered, "This wedding will be sweet, oh," and another person answered, "Amen." Outside, the sun sat high over Odayami Street in Aitoro, a busy town where Okada bikes buzzed like angry bees and kiosks sold cold sachet water. A wedding day in Aitoro was never quiet. Music always escaped into the road, even if the speakers were small. But today, the noise outside was not music. It was shouting. "Stop this wedding," a man yelled, pushing forward with his palm up like he owned the air. He was tall and dressed too neatly, the kind of neat that looked like anger in a suit. 2 other men flanked him. Behind them came 3 older women in matching lace wrappers, their faces tight, their eyes sharp. The bride, Zainab Ajayi, stood just inside the entrance with her father's arm around her. Her white dress was simple, not too shiny, but it fit her like hope. Her veil shook a little because her hands were shaking. At the altar, the groom, Chiknosu, turned around so fast his tie shifted. The pastor paused mid-prayer, his mouth open, his Bible still in his hands. The man at the front pointed at Chik like a judge. "This boy is a liar," he said. "He cannot marry her. We will not allow it." People gasped. A baby began to cry, then stopped as if even the baby understood this was serious. Chik stepped down from the altar. He tried to speak calmly, but his voice came out thin. "Sir, please," he said. "This is not the place." "It is the place," the man shouted. "Because you want to use the church to cover your shame." Zainab's father tightened his hold around her arm, like he feared she might fall into pieces. Zainab's eyes went to Chik's face, searching it the way you search a dark room for a light switch. Her lips parted, but no words came. The older women moved closer, lifting their wrapper slightly so they could walk faster. "She is not marrying him," one of them declared. "Not in our family." The church murmured like a pot beginning to boil. Then, suddenly, the shouting outside stopped. Not because anyone chose to be quiet, but because a new sound took over the street. A deep, steady rumble. Heavy engines. Slow and sure. Heads turned. Necks stretched. Even the angry man paused mid-breath. From the church doorway, people saw it. A line of black SUVs, shiny like polished stones after rain, rode into view one after another. Not one. Not 2. Many. Their windows were dark. Their tires moved with calm confidence, as if the road itself had agreed to step aside. They came in a convoy. And they did not park politely. They blocked the church. Front, side, even the small driveway. The SUVs formed a wall of metal and mystery, cutting off the street like a closing gate. Okada riders slowed down. A woman selling oranges froze with her bowl on her head. Even a dog stopped scratching itself and stared. The last SUV stopped with a soft, final hiss. For 2 long seconds, nothing happened. Then doors opened. Not with loud drama, but with quiet control. Men stepped out in dark suits. Their faces were serious, not wicked. Not scary. Just focused, like people who came for an assignment. One of them wore an earpiece. Another adjusted his cufflinks the way a person adjusts a watch before time becomes important. The entire church held its breath. The man who had shouted, "Stop this wedding," swallowed hard. His eyes flicked from the convoy to the bride to the groom. "Who are these people?" someone whispered. Zainab's cousin, standing near the front, muttered, "Is it the government?" "No," another person said. "Maybe it's a politician." A small boy near the doorway said what everybody was thinking but nobody wanted to say, "Maybe it's for Chik." Chik did not answer. He looked like his heart was running ahead of him, leaving his body behind. Then, From the middle SUV, a final door opened. A woman stepped out. She was older, but her posture was straight like a queen's. She wore a simple wrapper and blouse, but the fabric looked expensive without shouting about it. Gold earrings caught the sunlight, small and bright. Her hair was covered with a girly tied neatly, and her face carried the kind of calm that did not need to raise its voice. She looked at the church, then at the convoy, then at the man who wanted to hold the wedding. And she smiled, just a little. The suited men stepped aside for her like trees bending for wind. Inside the church, Zainab's knees almost gave way. Her father whispered, "Zainab, are you okay?" Zainab could only stare. Because she knew that woman. She had seen her before, not in pictures or on TV, but in the real world, in a place where people did not expect powerful people to show up. She had seen her at the Aitoro community market, wearing plain clothes, buying peppers like an ordinary person. And Zainab remembered something else too, something she had tried to forget. The way she had spoken that day. The way her words had cut someone like a knife, even though she did not touch them. At the altar, the pastor cleared his throat again, but his hands were now shaking. The woman began to walk toward the church entrance. Step by step. The suited men followed behind her, not crowding her, just guarding her space. The angry man lifted his chin as if he still wanted to be brave. "Madam," he called, forcing confidence into his voice, "this is family matter. You cannot." The woman raised one hand. Not to threaten. Not to slap. Just to stop the air from shaking. The man's mouth closed by itself. She spoke with a soft voice, but it carried like a bell. "I came," she said, "because somebody tried to stop what God has already approved." A wave of whispers rolled through the church like wind through dry leaves. Zainab's father's grip loosened slightly, confused. Cheick took a small step forward, his eyes locked on the woman's face like he feared she might disappear if he blinked. Zainab's heart hammered. The woman's gaze moved, slow and steady, until it landed on Zainab. It was not an angry gaze. It was not a sweet gaze either. It was a gaze that held memory. Then she looked at Cheick. And the smallest change came over her face, like a curtain shifting to reveal a window. "Cheick Nwosu," she said, clearly, so everyone could hear. "My son." The church did not just gasp this time. It erupted. People began to talk at once. Some stood up. Some leaned forward. Some covered their mouths. The older women who had marched in froze like statues. The man who wanted to hold the wedding stumbled backward, as if the words "my son" had pushed him. Zainab's eyes filled with tears she did not understand. Cheick's shoulders lifted and dropped, like he had been holding his breath for years and only now remembered how to breathe. The woman took one more step toward the entrance. Then she said, "And I have not come to beg anybody." She turned slightly and nodded once. The suited men moved. Two of them walked toward the loud man and his group, not touching them, but positioning themselves in a way that made it clear, this convoy was not here to watch. It was here to decide something. Zainab's father leaned down to his daughter and whispered, "Zainab, what is happening?" Zainab could not answer. Because in her mind, a different day played like a movie. A day at the market. A day she had insulted a stranger who looked poor. A day she had laughed when someone asked her to show patience. A day she had said, "If you are nobody, stay in your nobody place." And now, that nobody was walking into her wedding, surrounded by black SUVs, calling her groom "my son." The woman's eyes stayed on Zainab's face. Her voice softened, but the softness felt heavier than shouting. "Before this wedding continues," she said, "there is something the bride must hear." Zainab's breath caught in her throat. The pastor's Bible trembled in his hands. Cheick took a step toward Zainab, as if to protect her from words he did not yet know. And the woman, standing at the church doorway with the convoy still blocking the street like a living wall, opened her mouth to speak the secret that would either join two families forever or tear the whole church apart. But before she could say it, one of the older women screamed, "No! Don't say it!" The woman paused. She looked at the screaming woman. Then she looked back at Zainab. And the silence that followed felt like the whole town was listening. Zainab swallowed hard. Because whatever was about to be said, she could already feel it changing her life. And the woman finally spoke again, quiet and steady. "Zainab Ajay, do you remember what you did at Aito Market 3 months ago?" Zainab's knees shook. Chaik's eyes widened. The church leaned forward as one. And Zainab opened her mouth to answer, not knowing whether the truth would save the wedding or end it right there at the altar. Zainab's mouth stayed open for a second, but no sound came out. It was not that she could not speak. It was that the memory hit her like hot water. Fast. Unavoidable. It rushed into her mind and made her cheeks burn. 3 months ago, the sun had been just as bright. Aitoro Market had been full of noise, like it always was. Traders shouting prices. Generators humming. Women laughing. Men arguing over change. Tomatoes piled like small red hills. Pepper scent floating in the air. Zainab had gone there in a hurry, angry from the start because her driver had told her he could not come. That day, she did not want delay. She wanted control. So she drove herself in her small car, parked anyhow, and marched into the market with her chin high and her phone in her hand like it was a badge. Her best friend, Ifioma, had warned her while they walked between stalls. "Zainab, this wedding planning is stressing you. Just breathe small." Zainab had rolled her eyes. "Breathe for what? If people do their work properly, I won't need to breathe." They were pricing fabric for Osoebi when Zainab's heel caught on something. She almost fell. A woman nearby, older and plain-looking, reached out quickly and steadied her elbow. "Sorry, my daughter," the woman had said gently. "The ground is rough here." Zainab had jerked her arm away as if the touch offended her. "Please, madam," she had snapped. "Mind yourself." The woman had not argued. She had only nodded, "Come." But then another thing happened. Zainab's shopping bag tore, and 2 items fell to the dusty ground. A small crowd formed, not to help, but to watch. You know how people do when something is happening. The older woman bent down and started picking the things up carefully. "Thank you," Ifioma had said, grateful. But Zainab, already embarrassed, had looked at the woman's wrapper and slippers and decided she was too ordinary to speak to her like a human being. "Don't touch it," Zainab had barked. "Do you even know what you're touching?
Talking to you. You have
If you
ruined
spoil
everything
it,
with
can
your
you
greed.
pay?"
Step
The
back.
woman had
You
paused
do
with the
not know who
item
you
in
are
her
talking
hand.
to.
Her eyes had been kind, but now they looked tired. Not angry. Just tired, like someone used to being misunderstood. "Ihia," the woman had murmured. "I only wanted to help." Zainab had laughed a sharp laugh. "Help? Madam, please. If you are nobody, stay in your nobody place." The market had gone quiet for half a second. Even the pepper seller had stopped calling customers. Ifioma had pulled Zainab's arm. "Zainab, that was too much." But Zainab had tossed her hair and walked away, leaving the woman standing there with dust on her fingers and dignity on the ground. Later, when they got home, Ifioma had tried again. "Zainab, you can't be talking to people like that. Tomorrow it can be you that needs help." Zainab had shrugged. "I won't need help. I plan well." But Ifioma had looked at her long and said softly, "Nobody plans for mercy. Mercy is something you meet." Zainab had ignored that too. Now, back in the church doorway, that same older woman stood facing her, surrounded by black SUVs and men in suits, and the question sat in the air like smoke. "Do you remember what you did?" the woman asked again. Zainab's throat tightened. She finally nodded, small. Yes, she whispered. The church reacted immediately. What did she do? Oh, what is going on? Is that why they brought Convoy? Zainab heard the whispers, but they felt far away, like voices coming from another street. Chaik stepped closer to her. He did not touch her, but he stood near, like a human shield. Mama, Chaik said, his voice shaking, this is not the time. The woman lifted her eyes to him. It is exactly the time. She turned back to Zainab, then addressed the whole church with a calm voice that carried. My name is Chief Mrs. Adizwa Adikoya, she said. At the mention of that name, a few people's eyes widened. A man in the second row whispered, wait. Adikoya. Like Adikoya Group. Another woman hissed, keep quiet, you two talk. Chief Mrs. Adikoya continued. In this town, many people see big cars and think they mean pride. They see security and think it means fear. But I did not bring these vehicles to show power. I brought them to stop wickedness from entering this church. She glanced toward the man who had shouted to stop the wedding. He stood stiff now, his earlier boldness draining out of him like water from a cracked bucket. Chaik's jaw tightened. Uncle Ted, he said under his breath, like he could not believe he was even seeing him here. So that was his name. Uncle Ted. Uncle Ted's eyes darted. He forced a smile that looked painful. Madam, with all due respect, he began, you don't understand. This boy. Chief Mrs. Adikoya raised her hand again. The smile died on Uncle Ted's lips. I understand enough, she replied. I understand that you have been trying to control Chaik's life since he was a child. I understand you have been feeding lies, planting fear, and calling it family advice. The church murmured. People leaned in like they were watching a movie, but this was real life, and the air felt heavy with consequence. Zainab's father, Alhaji Ajayi, stepped forward slowly, confusion and pride battling on his face. Madam, he said respectfully, please, we are simple people. We came to marry our daughter with honor. I do not understand why this matter is entering today. Chief Mrs. Adikoya's expression softened when she looked at him. Alhaji, she said, you are doing what a father should do. Protecting your child. That is good. Then her gaze moved back to Zainab, and her tone became firm again. But protection without truth is like building a house on sand. Zainab's hands trembled. She held her bouquet so tightly the flowers bent. I'm sorry, she blurted suddenly, the words bursting out like they had been trapped in her chest. I'm sorry for how I spoke to you that day. I was rude. I was proud. I didn't know. I didn't know who you were. Chief Mrs. Adikoya's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger, but in careful listening. Who I was, she repeated. Zainab swallowed. I mean, I didn't know you were important. A gentle, sad smile touched the older woman's lips. That is the problem, she said quietly. You think respect is something you give only to important people. The church fell still. She stepped inside now. The suited men stayed at the doorway and along the walls. They did not look scary. They looked like people trained to keep peace, not cause chaos. Chief Mrs. Adikoya walked slowly up the aisle. Each step felt like a drumbeat in Zainab's chest. I came to this wedding, she said, because my son asked me to come. Zainab's head snapped toward Chaik. Chaik's eyes were glossy. Zainab, he said softly, I wanted to tell you. I tried. Tried when? Zainab whispered, heart mixing with fear. Chaik exhaled. Every time your family spoke about background. Every time you laughed at poor people. Every time you said, as long as he is hardworking, it's fine, but your tone was like you were doing me a favor. Zainab flinched as if slapped, not because Chaik was cruel, but because he was true. Chief Mrs. Adekoya reached the front pew and turned to face everyone. "Chike is my son," she said again, for those who still doubted. "But he did not grow up inside my house." Gasps. Zainab's eyes widened. Chike stared at his mother, shocked too, like he knew parts of the story but not all. Chief Mrs. Adekoya's voice remained steady. "When I was younger," she began, "I loved a man. A good man. We were not rich. We had hope, and hope can make people brave." She paused, letting the church settle. "But life does not always go where love points. Sometimes it turns sharply." Zainab's heart pounded. The church felt like it was floating between past and present. "I became successful later," Chief Mrs. Adekoya continued. "Not by magic. By work. By patience. By help from God and from people who saw something in me before I had anything." Her eyes moved briefly across the crowd, as if remembering invisible faces. "And when money came, family members came too. Some came with love. Some came with hunger." Uncle Ted shifted uncomfortably. She turned her head toward him. "Like him?" Uncle Ted lifted his hands. "Auntie, please. Don't please me," she replied, calm but sharp. "You know what you did." The church erupted again. "What did he do?" Tell us." Alhaji Ajayi's face tightened. "Madam, please," he pleaded. "This is still a wedding." Chief Mrs. Adekoya nodded once. "Yes. And that is why the truth must come out now, before vows are spoken on top of a lie." Then she looked directly at Zainab. "Do you love my son?" she asked. Zainab's lips trembled. "Yes," she said, almost crying. "I do." "Then listen carefully," Chief Mrs. Adekoya said. "Because the same pride that made you insult me in the market is the same pride that can destroy your marriage if you carry it inside." Zainab lowered her head. Tears fell onto her bouquet. Chief Mrs. Adekoya continued, "And there is another thing." Her gaze moved to Chike, and her voice softened in a way that made everyone feel the weight of what was coming. "Chike," she said, "the reason I did not raise you myself is not because I did not want you." Chike's breath hitched. "It is because," she said slowly, "someone in this church helped to take you away from me." A loud, sharp inhale swept through the crowd. Zainab lifted her head, tears on her cheeks. Chike staggered backward half a step, like the words had pushed him. Uncle Ted's face went pale. The pastor's hands tightened around his Bible. Chief Mrs. Adekoya's eyes stayed on Uncle Ted, steady as a judge. "Today," she said, "the same person who stole my child is trying to halt his wedding." The church was so silent you could hear a pin drop. Then Uncle Ted exploded, his fear turning to rage. "This is a lie," he shouted. "Auntie, you want to shame me because I said the girl is not fit." Chief Mrs. Adekoya did not blink. One of the suited men near the door stepped forward slightly, holding a slim brown envelope. Zainab's stomach twisted. Because whatever was inside the envelope looked like it could change everything. Chief Mrs. Adekoya pointed gently at the envelope. "Open it," she told the man. The man's fingers moved to the flap. Chike's voice came out cracked. "Mama, what is that?" Chief Mrs. Adekoya looked at her son, and for the first time, her calm face showed pain. "It is the proof," she said softly. "And once it is read, this wedding will either continue with truth, or it will stop with tears." The envelope began to open. Zainab grabbed Chike's hand without thinking, holding on like a child. The church leaned forward as one body. And as the paper inside slid out, Uncle Ted shouted, "If you read that here, I will scatter everything." At that threat, the black SUVs outside seemed to hum louder, like they were listening to. And the man holding the document lifted it up, about to reveal the secret that had been hidden for years. The paper shook slightly in the man's hand. Not because he was afraid, but because everyone was watching him like their future depended on that single page. "Read it," Chief Mrs. Adekoya said. Her voice was not loud, but it left no space for argument. Uncle Tate took a step forward. His face was wet now, sweat shining on his forehead. "Auntie, please," he begged. "Let us talk outside. This is family matter." Chief Mrs. Adekoya shook her head slowly. "You made it public when you tried to stop this wedding." The man holding the document cleared his throat and began to read. "This document is a sworn statement dated 26 years ago," he said. "It states that Tate Adekoya took a newborn child from Adizwa Adekoya under false claims, saying the child had died, and gave the baby to another family to raise." The church exploded. "No. Jesus. Zainab's hand flew to her mouth. Chaik's knees bent, and he had to grab the pew to steady himself. The man continued reading, calm and clear. The statement also includes witness signatures, hospital records, and DNA confirmation completed 3 months ago. 3 months ago. Zainab felt dizzy. That was around the same time she had insulted the woman at the market. Around the same time this truth had been waking up quietly, while she planned flowers and cake. Uncle Tate screamed. "It's a lie. She paid them. She is rich, she can buy anything." Chief Mrs. Adekoya turned to him, her eyes no longer gentle. "Money can buy silence," she said. "But it cannot buy blood." She faced the church again. "For years," she continued, "I searched quietly. I did not want noise. I did not want revenge. I wanted my child. And when I finally found him, I did not rush into his life like a storm." She looked at Chaik, and her eyes softened again. "I watched him. I saw his kindness. His patience. I saw how he loved this woman standing beside him. And I thanked God." Chaik's voice trembled. "Mama, all this time." Uncle Tate said my mother abandoned me. Tears slid down Chief Mrs. Adekoya's cheeks, but she did not wipe them away. "He lied," she said simply. "Because lies need many years to grow strong." Uncle Tate dropped to his knees. "Auntie," he cried. "I was young. I was desperate. You were leaving the country. I thought the child would be better off." Chief Mrs. Adekoya looked at him with sadness, not hate. "You thought about yourself," she replied. "And today, you tried to do it again." She turned to the pastor. "Pastor," she said, "this wedding can continue. But not under fear. Not under lies." The pastor nodded slowly, his hands still shaking. Yes, madam." Zainab finally found her voice. She stepped forward, her dress brushing the floor, her veil pushed back. Chief Mrs. Adekoya turned to her. Zainab dropped to her knees. The church gasped again. "I am sorry," Zainab said, crying openly now. "Not because of your cars. Not because of who you are. I am sorry because I forgot how to be human." Her voice cracked. "That day in the market, you tried to help me. And I used pride to push you away. If you had not forgiven me in your heart, you would not be standing here today." Chief Mrs. Adekoya watched her closely. Silence filled the church, thick and waiting. Then the older woman walked forward. She did not rush. She did not shout. She bent slightly and lifted Zainab up by the hands. "Stand," she said gently. Zainab stood, tears streaking her face. Chief Mrs. Adekoya wiped one tear away with her thumb. "Pride is loud," she said. "But humility listens. Today, you listened." She turned to Chaik. "My son," she said, opening her arms. Chaik stepped into them, shaking like a child. The church watched as a grown man cried into his mother's shoulder, years of loss melting into one moment. Some people cried with them. Some people prayed quietly. Even the choir woman wiped her eyes. Chief Mrs. Adekoya pulled back and held Chike's face. "I did not raise you," she said softly. "But God did. And He did well." She turned to Uncle Ted, who was still kneeling. "You will answer for what you did," she said. "But today is not about punishment. Today is about truth." Two of the suited men gently helped Uncle Ted to his feet and led him toward the door. He did not resist. He looked small now, like a man whose shadow had finally left him. The black SUVs outside shifted slightly, opening a path. The chaos slowly settled. The pastor cleared his throat again, this time with purpose. "Shall we continue?" he asked carefully. Chief Mrs. Adekoya nodded. "Yes," she said. "Let love speak louder than history." The choir began to sing again, softly at first, then stronger. Zainab took Chike's hands. "I didn't know," she whispered. "But I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to change." Chike squeezed her fingers. "That's all I ever wanted." The pastor smiled, relief washing over his face. "Then let us join these two," he said, "not just as husband and wife, but as people who have seen truth and chosen love." Outside, the black SUVs remained, quiet and steady, no longer blocking the church, but guarding the peace. And as the vows began, the town of Itoro breathed again. Because that day, the wedding was almost halted. But instead, something greater happened. A family was restored. A lie was broken. And a lesson spread quietly from the church to the market, from the rich to the poor, from parents to children. That respect should never wait for status. And kindness should never depend on power.